Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci, and this is NLL Lacrosse Talk. Welcome, everybody. Glad you could join us. I'm creeping up to 20 years doing this show. I can't believe it's been that long. I got to say one thing, though. Not as long a career as I've done lacrosse, but pretty eventful, if not getting close. Paul Dawson. Paul, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, boys.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure.
Pretty much almost exact same time as you started the show. I guess I've been playing pretty close. Got a couple years on me, but pretty close.
Not many. No.
I
can tell you, it doesn't show. You're looking good for an old man like you are.
I'm covering all my grays right now. So I got the grays coming in, but
everyone is well earned, is the way I call it.
I think you earned them. And you've earned a lot of respect around the lacrosse world, and of course here as well. Paul, first of all, we always like to ask how people picked up lacrosse. In your case, how'd you pick up a stick?
Yeah, kind of interesting story. I mean, maybe not interesting, but basically because of my brother. And it was because of my brother's best friend. So my brother actually played rep soccer, and I was playing some baseball and soccer at the time. We were a big hockey family. My dad coached both of us, and then kind of in the summer, that's kind of what we did. But I was just kind of farting around in like house league soccer and baseball. And then my brother's best friend's dad was a big lacrosse player back in the day, and they played hockey there. So he's like, hey, Dan should play lacrosse. It's good for hockey, so on and so forth. But I was like, yeah, sure. My dad never knew anything about lacrosse. And then just kind of little brother, it's like, well, you're going to play lacrosse too, because that's what your brother's doing. And it's just easier to bring you both to hopefully one rink than a field and a baseball field. So that's kind of how it got started. And we had a couple guys in the city of Oakville where we grew up that had some deep roots in lacrosse, and kind of took some learn to play classes from them, and then kind of rest is history. But I played 1 year out, and then went into goal the next year after that, my second year playing. And then I reversed that, obviously, at 21 years old later on.
Well, I get what you're saying about it's not that interesting a story, because it feels like you were hijacked into the game, but you stuck around. How come?
Yeah, just like, again, I had a really good coach who was a guy named Bruce Donovan. He passed away a couple years ago. Younger guy, but he played Oakville lacrosse, and he just made lacrosse fun. Like, I remember we would go for runs around Oakville, but he would be running with us. We'd go get popsicles after the run, and just a lot of outdoor practices and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I liked it. It was fun. And then obviously, kind of how I went into goal is we actually won the Pee Wee B Ontario Championship our first year. And then the next year our goalie moved away to Calgary. So again, I was always a big kid, and because I was just starting to play, I obviously wasn't that good when I first started playing. So I said I'll go in net to, there was only one team in Oakville. It wasn't like there was a lineup of goalies and not many kids wanted to go in. So I said I'd go in, and obviously just being a big kid, I was kind of decent at the start just because you take up so much net. And so it's just kind of, I liked it, and it was fun. It was a different juxtaposition from, hockey. And then as my brother played, it was, I liked everything he kind of did too, little brother syndrome. So that's kind of why I stuck around. But again, I'd give kudos to Bruce Donovan. He made coming to the rink fun, and we used to do lacrosse tournaments in Niagara-on-the-Lake, but we'd always go camping and just kind of stuff like that. Those kind of core memories as a kid where he made it super fun.
Getting drafted as a goaltender. Makes sense of that. Help us understand what it was like and why you changed.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, again, so I started playing goalie that second year, and then got pretty good, and ended up getting drafted because Oakville didn't have a junior A team at that point. So Well, we just got a junior B team, I think, the year before I got drafted. But so I got drafted pretty high to Burlington. I can't remember the actual position, but I got drafted to Burlington. So I came in, and Ted Zawicki, who was a longtime Buffalo Bandit, was the coach. And we weren't very good in Burlington, but played 3 years there and then went to Brampton, got traded to Brampton after my third year. And we had a little bit of success in Brampton. And, I guess I was half decent, half decent at goal. I'd have to look at the stats, but I was always, again, I was, 6'5", 220. So again, took a lot of net of the 4x4s and got drafted by San Jose, 7th overall. I had a good, we did a, not really a combine, but we did kind of like an exhibition game in Six Nations with kind of all the draft eligible players. And I remember I had a pretty good game, and there was some, I think Johnny Meridian was in the stands at that point. Anyway, so got drafted 7th overall, was the third string goalie for my first year, backed up a couple games when Anthony Cosmo I never got any minutes, but I got on the bench and then traveled during the playoffs. And then that summer, after every year in junior, I'd go up to the major team and be the third string for Brampton Majors. So again, getting shoot on by, Colin Doyle, Josh Sanderson, Danny Teat, my brother. So it was always pretty cool. And then, so got protected by them. So that following summer after getting drafted, came back, and we were shorthanded guys. So whether guys just didn't know they were coming back to play. So we were a little shorthanded at the back end. So after a couple games, because I would go on the floor and just kind of do the third string thing. And we had our goalies at that point were Anthony Cosmo and Patty Campbell. So 2 guys that are starting in the NLL. And obviously, Cos is a Hall of Famer, and Patty Campbell is, a dynamite goalie in his own right. Mm-hmm. After a couple of games, we were shorthanded. So it was after a warm up or something. And Troy Cornley came up to me and just said, would you ever think about playing out for a couple games? And, it took me by surprise. And I was kind of like, well, no, like I've never thought about it. I just got drafted 7th overall. I'm trying to make it as a goalie. You don't really go 7th overall and try and switch positions.
Somebody thinks you can play goal.
Yeah. And then so that was the thing. He was like, well, because I played a bunch of sports growing up, played, rep basketball, played junior A hockey. So I never played goalie in anything else. So I played a bunch of sports. So he's like, well, just, I think, the way we play defense, I think you could fill in a spot for a couple games. And again, you're not going to get any playing time with us and so on. And so, and I was like, I'm okay with it, not the playing time. I don't mind, taking the shots. He's like, well, listen, like just think about it. We could use some help at the back end right now, and just think about it. Like, it was never supposed to be permanent. It was like, we need you for a couple games type of deal. So I went home, hemmed and hawed. Actually, I think my brother was in Victoria at that point. So I called him. I was just like, hey, like, Troy just asked me to play defense. Like, I'm kind of in a mental pretzel here. Like, I said, no, I don't really know what to do. He's like, well, honestly, like, if you're helping the team, it's not that big of a deal. And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. And I was kind of like, okay, it's only for a couple games. So like, let's do it. So kind of went around the house, found some of my brother's old gear, got a stick, and then started playing. And then I just never went back in ever again. So
when sorry, go ahead.
No,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go for it.
I was just going to say kind of a follow-up. So when you were playing in that, now you're playing defense. How long did it take, and why did you decide, this is kind of okay?
Yeah, so like hockey was always my number one love. And it was always, like every kind of kid's dream to go do something. And like I said, I played 5 years of junior, and it kind of ended badly for me. So I had a bit of a sour taste from hockey. And then as I started playing out, I tell guys this all the time, it was always, as I got older, it was weird going from junior hockey to junior lacrosse, and being a defenseman in hockey and a goaltender in lacrosse. I did find that part a little bit weird, where, the goalie, you're kind of by yourself. You're stuck in this crease. And then, you know, I was the captain of my junior A team. So you're kind of in the mix and with all the boys and stuff like that. But in the crowd, I still was obviously with the boys, but I just always found it was a little bit different. Like, you're not battling with the boys. You're just the goalie saving the ball. So when I started playing out, it kind of like sparked back that love. It's like, man, this is a lot like hockey again. Like I'm getting in fights. I'm playing with the boys, and you know, it's just, you feel like you're kind of more part of the team. So I kind of like started falling in love with playing out. And then so San Jose caught wind of it, and I think at first they weren't too thrilled with the idea of me playing out. And then I'll have to give Colin Doyle a lot of credit. He's like, hey, he's doing a pretty good job. Like, you may want to think of giving him a look, like playing out. So at kind of like halfway through that season, after it was kind of decided that I wasn't going to go back in net. Now this wasn't, just a couple games. I was a regular defenseman playing every game. It was kind of like, they called me, like, hey, like, we hear you're doing this, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's all good, but, we'll give you the option of coming as a player or as a goalie for a training camp. So that's when I kind of made the decision, like, all right, like, let's go all in and try the out thing and get a full off season of training and try and make this as an out player. That's kind of all how it all went down.
This is my last question as far as going from that the direction, drilling down on what we have. So when you look at a new goalie come on to a team, any team that you're on, do you see them, you think, and you remember what it was like for you and understand and somehow figure out a way to talk to them, to help them to be patient? Because I think you learned the most important lesson about being a goaltender and trying to get on a team. It's a little harder, obviously, because your experience says so, to be a goaltender than it is a defender.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, there's only, there's two spots in this league. There's really only one goalie that plays. It's not like the NHL where you're playing 82 games and you need that backup. There's only 18, and kind of every team has their horse back in between the pipes, and the backups are getting there usually for relief or for whatever. So, it's funny. I kind of had the conversation with Steve Orleman last year. Like, we were just talking, and he's a young guy and has some experience starting when he was in New York and stuff. And now he's behind Vino, but it's just like, again, playing for 19 years, you see the evolution of goalies, and most goalies don't, not necessarily figure it out, but kind of don't get that breakthrough to like their late 20s. So they may get some time and then maybe a starting job, and it kind of goes up and down. So I try and tell guys that too. Like, even if you look at like Vino, like, he came in as a backup in 2-3 seasons, and he finally got his shot and ran with it. But it takes time. Again, like, the nets are still different sizes. Shooters are obviously better. The game's a little bit faster. So, again, I always just say, even like for backups and third strings, like, get as many shots as you can. But the harder you work and the more you kind of put yourself out there and let coaches and people know that you're willing to take the shots, like, the better it's going to be for you. But it does take time. I try and preach that it takes time, even with, players in this league, right? Like, there's only a finite amount of spots. So it takes some time. And again, if you can go back to junior or back to a major team and get some playing time, it's going to go a long way. But yeah, patience is definitely a virtue in this game. And you kind of can't get discouraged about not getting the playing time, and just make sure you're doing all the right things away from the floor and being a good teammate and taking those shots, and just know that your time will come. But when it comes, you got to be ready for it.
That's a very interesting story and a great insight into something that we don't normally talk about, right, Gary? That's not
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not often you change after you've been drafted.
No, I know.
It's with your athletic ability that you're able to do that as well as play goal. But you brought up your dad originally, and I was lucky enough to meet him a number of times and talk with him, of course, at track and a few other places where you or Dan were playing. Talk about him and his influence on you guys, known as the ultimate lacrosse dad, but just what he meant to you and Dan, just growing up, and even your professional careers.
Yeah, I mean, he was he was everything. It's still miss the guy every day. And my parents got divorced pretty young, and it's funny, like me and my brother look back on it, and I'm one of 4 kids. So we have 2 sisters that kind of nobody knows about, 2 older sisters of me and Dan. And that's always kind of a joke too, that everyone thinks it's just me and Dan, but we have 2 older sisters my older sister was a good athlete in her own right. She was an athlete of the year twice in high school, but my parents got divorced. Like my dad had to start all over again at the age of like 52, like move into a basement apartment. We were still both playing AAA hockey. He made sure he didn't move away, like wanted to be involved in our lives, and just, he gave us everything that we needed to try and be successful. And again, he was a cop till he did 44 years. He retired at 74 years old.
Wow.
And just like, again, an animal, worked hard. And again, he didn't really care if we were good or not, but I think the biggest thing he always instilled us was work ethic. He didn't care if we scored goals or whatever, but if we're out there, not trying hard or taking any game for granted, whether hockey, lacrosse, or whatever, like, we would hear about it. So I think, you look at my brother and myself, especially Dan, and the work he put into lacrosse, like, it definitely comes from my old man. And then again, he was just like the ultimate support role. Like, when I first came into the league, Dan was in Arizona, I was in San Jose. He'd fly to San Jose, then Saturday night he'd fly back to Arizona, and just, again, the ultimate dad, like the ultimate lacrosse dad, just always there to support us and give us everything, we needed to be successful. And it was like that in life too. Anytime we had trouble or whatever, he was obviously the first guy we called, and he'd figure it out, whether it was, maybe we got in a little bit of trouble with the police or something. We'd call the little man, and he'd figure it out and either give us the advice or help us get out of a jam. But yeah, he was the best. And I think, again, like, I'll just say the work ethic and just seeing like him as a police officer in Toronto and kind of what he did for us growing up, just that's one of the biggest values he instilled in us, to just like working hard, no matter what it is, whether it's lacrosse, job, whatever, relationships, just make sure you put everything you can into it.
Right. Now, my favorite question to ask is your first training camp. Now, we already talked a little bit about going to San Jose, but was it what you expected? Now, you're going in as a defenseman as opposed to a goalie, but just the whole idea of training camp. Was it?
Yeah, it was nerve-wracking. I mean, again, I remember reading a book called Mind Gym. It is like a sports psychology book, and it was this guy who, he worked with a bunch of high-level athletes, A-Rod and Michael Jordan, all this stuff. So just kind of trying to get mentally through the fact that, I was going to go try out as an out player on a very good San Jose team. Again, I played, with some good guys in Brampton, but this was a whole new ball game. Again, I didn't really have the backing of like Troy and Terry Sanderson, who kind of went to bat for me in Brampton and gave me all this playing time. So to be honest, like, I didn't have a great training camp. It was good. Like, it was the classic, like 3-4 sessions every weekend, flying into San Jose, flying out. But for whatever reason, again, I think Johnny Meridian I think Walt Christensen wanted to cut me, and Johnny Meridian said we should keep him around. And the one thing that kind of always kept me around a little bit was, my toughness and ability to fight. And it was the same thing in hockey. I was an okay hockey player and started off fighting, and I always would kind of get better at the game as it went on. And it's kind of how lacrosse went too. When I first started playing major, I was fighting a lot, and even in the NLL. And then I'd always have that as my kind of fallback. Yeah, but then I'll get this game figured out, and I'll put the work in to become a good player. And then, again, I was lucky enough to play 15 of the 16 games my first year, and just kind of steady improvement. And again, it's kind of how it all went. But it was definitely an eye-opening experience. Like, again, our offense that year was Colin Doyle, Jeff Sawicki, Luke Wiles, like some big time players. So again, maybe a little bit in over my head as far as playing, but I was only, 4 months into playing lacrosse, but it all worked out. It was fun, but it was just, yeah, definitely an eye-opening experience.
For sure. Now you get traded over to Boston, and you actually wound up playing with your brother.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because that was some great teams. Horrible arena deal, but the team itself was great. You had Cause and Net, Dan, a whole list of players. Just, now you're in the Boston Garden, and, you're playing with them. So many storied places, too, you get to play.
For sure. Yeah, like obviously Boston comes in after my first year playing out in San Jose, and Portland, or no, Arizona. Was it Portland?
Yep.
Whoever gets the Spanish, whoever gets taken first overall. And then again, once I saw that happening, then there was the expansion draft. So I don't think I was protected. So I was actually kind of hoping that I was going to get picked up by them. Obviously having a chance to go play with my brother, and again, kind of being a first year guy, like we had some good defenders on San Jose as well. So I was kind of hoping to get picked up by him, and they ended up picking Peter Veltman. Yeah. And then I got traded for Peter Veltman and somebody else, and ended up getting traded to them, and then end up living in Boston with my brother. And again, like, I think, you look at that team, and kind of Tom Ryan came in, and I know he didn't make a lot of friends, but that was kind of back in the day when people didn't protect guys with the kind of handshake deal, like, hey, you don't pick this guy. And Tommy was like, no, like, I'll pick whoever I want, and then if you want him back, I want 2-3 players. And that's kind of how we built Boston, and that's how we're so successful. But obviously, like, picking up Cause and Dan, like, right off the bat, then we had Daryl Veltman first overall. So we had a great team. And I think, again, we had close to 12 or 13 guys living in Boston. We're a young team, bunch of young guys, and it was just like unreal. And I think that helped us grow too as a team. But yeah, we look back, and those teams were really good. I think we went 9-7 our first year. Playoffs, lost to Buffalo, but we were really good for the 2 years I was there. And it was just kind of, again, time of my life. And obviously that's kind of when I first started to get to play with my brother, and just
I've seen a picture over your shoulder of you and Dan.
Yeah, that's
I brought
me.
This up for you. So just to bring it back to yesteryear.
For sure. That I fed him a breakaway pass, and he scored, and that's the picture after I ran over and celebrated. So yeah, actually all three of these things were in my dad's basement. So
that's awesome.
After he passed, I took him over, and I got him hung up in my basement. But yeah, so I think Larry Palumbo might have taken that picture, if I'm not mistaken, who's been around the game for a while. But yeah, so pretty cool. And then again, it was just, now my dad got to come to the games, family got to come down, a little bit easier for him, and that kind of created a run where we got to play a long time together too. But yeah, it was Boston was just an unbelievable experience, and just, again, an amazing city. But again, just being young and having like almost half your team there was unbelievable.
Right. Well, it's funny because with all the stuff behind me, pretty much shows you your career is, there's a Mammoth thing over here. There's a Bandits thing up there. There's an old Nighthawks thing there, a Wings thing there, another Nighthawks thing there, Seals thing. We've kind of hit your cities in there.
Yeah.
But you got to talk to me about that Lion Brawl that always keeps coming up. Boston, Toronto. I think it's 2011, 2010. I think 2011. Yeah. And you and Colin started off. And you and Colin go way back from Brampton and from San Jose, and you guys, we're not a minute into the game. And,
it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Doyley's first game back in Toronto, and then something happened in the crease. I probably dirtied him, and he got up, and I had some choice words and gave him a cross check, and he kind of flopped, and then we were kind of nose to nose, like going at it, and again, I was kind of waiting for the refs to come in, and I don't know if he was either. And then it just kind of kept going and going. And then we were like, are we going? And then we both were like, yeah. But then it kind of goes back to the Brampton days. So Troy and T were in Toronto that day, or in Toronto at that time. And obviously with me in Brampton. And so me and Doyley fought. And then the next play, you could see all the guys coming out of the out of the Toronto gate, and I'll never forget my brother. He was yelling at the ref to blow the whistle in because Patty McCready was coming after him, and he knew if you fought in the stoppage of whistle, everyone gets kicked out. But ref forgot to blow it in. The 5 guys from Toronto dropped their gloves. 5 guys from our team dropped their gloves and had the infamous brawl. And I think we had like 10 guys left on the bench, no offensive guys. Like, it's funny, we had Greg Downey on our podcast a little while ago, and he like led our team in shots, and it was like his first year playing as an American. So, and we ended up losing in overtime, I think like 9 or like 8-7 or something like that. So it was a crazy game, but it was funny because I think that was my brother's first time playing in Toronto since he got hired on as a firefighter. So whenever we would come to Toronto, my dad used to get like hundreds of tickets. So there was a huge contingency of Brampton firefighters in that game, and my brother got kicked out within like the first minute. And then I got hired, a couple of years later, and they're like, yeah, we came to watch your brother. I'm like, yeah, no, that was my fault. He got kicked out. They're like, yeah, we paid all this money to come, and he played 10 seconds. We didn't get there. I was like, yeah, no, that was me. That's my fault. Sorry about that.
We had McCready on not long ago. I guess last year or something. We were talking about that particular time, and he was doing undercover work for Niagara for the cops.
Yeah.
He comes back, and of course the game's on TSN. And he's sitting there trying to, it's not like I didn't get hurt. I had to try and cover my face because I didn't want to blow my cover.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the mixed lives of lacrosse players for sure, which is hilarious.
Oh yeah, the whole thing was hilarious. I had brought some people too for their first look. And it's like, does this happen all the time? Sure.
Yeah, no, it's just a normal part of the game for sure. We've been in a couple line brawls together. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Now, you guys wind up going to Philadelphia, and your style's perfect for that fan base. Talk about getting in, because those Wings teams were great too. Athene Nucci, he's actually a guest next week, so
nice.
Give your regards. But
yeah, for sure.
Drew Westervelt, Mundorf, Brett Manny, Ryan Doyle, Alex Hart, all these guys, and you guys are in there, and Philadelphia becomes a real force at this time.
Yeah. Again, I got traded, so again, kind of a long-winded story, but I ended up signing a offer sheet with Toronto after that year, and then Calgary was the one. So then Boston traded me to Calgary. They matched the offer, and then Calgary traded me to Philadelphia, which not a lot of people know. So I was there before my brother. Then obviously Boston got disbanded, and then when my brother came, then we got Brody, and that's kind of when we had those good teams. And Snyder just left, so I kind of took the role of Jeff Snyder a little bit. And, he was kind of a hero in that city with how tough he was and the great fights he had. So, yeah, we were great. And that was kind of the first, invasion of like the Americans, like you said, like Brendan Mundorf, Drew Westervelt, Max Sebald, Matt Danowski, Brett Manny, like John McFadden at the back end. And we had a great team. Again, it was kind of just, that was like a little bit of the dark days of Philly. They were kind of bad before we got there, and we just never really got to get the fans back in it. But again, it was, the people that were there, obviously passionate, you still had Chopper behind the penalty bench and stuff like that. So it was unbelievable to play there.
Yeah. And that's Meridian's idea, to try and get as much American in there, try and get, get the nationality and get everybody back into the crowd.
Yeah, exactly. But end of the day, like, I owe a lot of my career to Johnny Meridian, and for a while we couldn't shake each other, but he had some interesting ideas. But the one thing, people just care if you win. They don't care where you're from. They just care if you win. And, and it's a shame because those guys were all turning the corner. And then the last year before me and Dan got traded, most of those guys sat out the season because of the World Field Championship. I think U.S. Lacrosse put a lot of pressure on those guys not to play. So like a guy like Mundorf, Max Sebald, all those Ned Crotty, like all those guys sat out, and we couldn't like fill those. And they were just about like, those guys were just breaking through and about to become like first Tom Schreibers and stuff
Right.
like that. Like, they're getting really good. So it was kind of unfortunate because they were becoming really good players, and then we had one more bad season, and then then we kind of got traded over to Philly or from Philly to Roch, but it was still like an amazing experience for sure.
Right. So we're talking about winning now, and then you're talking about Rochester, and you guys make history there. They'd won the one already, and that was an interesting year. The year before you joined them, because they were 8-8 and peaked at the right time, and away they went, and they just kept going. This team that you come on to is a really great team, and I think they went 14-4 or something like that. Just a terrific team. Another strong team: Kersey, Dan, yourself, Cody Jamieson, Stephen Keogh, Casey Powell, Johnny Palace, Vitarelli, Walters, a whole list of great guys. Of course, Matt Vincent net.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, this is a heyday of Rochester, really, since its inception, and Blue Cross Arena is packed and loud. And talk about going there and the fan base, because they're a great fan base there.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of. Again, just like a blue collar city, obviously, and just people that love the game of lacrosse. And then again, made it special being, 2 hours from our hometown. So, friends, family, all got to come to most of the games and kind of enjoy every game we got home. And again, being good and win those championships didn't hurt either. But yeah, like we were getting, 7,000 to 9,000 every game and loud, and just, Kurt Stiers being, a great owner and GM. And it was a hell of a time. Obviously, anytime you win, it makes things, a little bit better, but definitely like the support and stuff. Like, I think we sold out, the one championship we won there. But yeah, we were probably averaging like at least 7,000, and it only seats 11. So it's almost a full barn every night. And just like you say, loud, and just, a lot like a Buffalo fan base where everyone's wearing jerseys, they know who you are. It's not just like, hey, we're going to the game to check it out. Like, we're passionate. We know who these guys are. We're wearing teal and gray and white. And, it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Now, 2014, the introduction of the mini game. You guys win it, but the mini game. Man, and I remember sitting there in the crowd for that, and it's all strategy. You guys win the first one, or no, Calgary wins the first one. You guys win at home. Molosky hits most of his players for that game when you guys get a hold of it, so that they can be rested for this 10-minute game. The 10-minute game was probably the most interesting thing of that whole day, because for a while there it looked like, oh my God, did they have the strategy to win this? But the Matt Vince factor, and you guys pull it out 3-2.
Yeah, it was, again, it was crazy. And here's my little guy, Mac.
Hey, Mac.
Say hi, buddy. Here, you want me to open this? Yeah, it was crazy because we went down 2-0 like right away, and it was only a 10-minute game. And you think about it, like that's only 10 possessions each way if you really look at it. And we went down 2-0, so it was crazy. And then Pointer scored, Vit scored, and then like you say, Vino shuts the door, and then kind of the rest is history. I think J-Dub may have scored the game winner. I can't remember who scored the game winner, but it's kind of it's crazy because you don't really know what the strategy is, to be honest. It's 10 minutes. It's almost like you want to score first and just hold on to the lead, like kind of like a summer ball overtime. But when you get down 2-0 right off the bat, you kind of have to throw caution to the wind, and luckily it worked out for us.
Yeah, Matt made some amazing saves down the stretch, because even the last few seconds,
they had a great look right at the end, and he made a huge save. I remember that. He made a huge save on a 6-on-5, I think, on Curtis Dixon. So they had their chances too. So it was crazy. Definitely not easy on the heart and the emotions. Looking back, it's fun to be a part of, but I'm glad we've kind of gone back to a more traditional sense. But because you're trying to explain to people this mini game, you're like, wait a minute, you play it 10 minutes.
It comes down to 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I know, but but it was definitely fun.
Absolutely. And then you guys win again, and it's a three-peat, which is history. Toronto had the 4 and 5, but this is the first time anybody's ever done that. Now, we fast forward, and you actually have a chance to be part of it again in Buffalo. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But you get a chance. After 2019, you get a chance. You move over to San Diego, and basically their first year, better golfing. Much better golfing.
Yeah. I stuck around after last week in the Golf Torrey Pines, which was unbelievable.
That's a hell of a course.
yeah, it was unbelievable.
But you get in with a hell of a team for a team that's in their inaugural year, and they have Austin Stoss, they have Westberg, Connor Fields, Connor Kiernan, Jeremy Noble. The list goes on and on of all these great players, and here you are again with this great faction of players and making history out there.
Yeah, it honestly reminded me a lot of Boston. And then it was cool because, I played with Patty Merrill for a long time in those Brampton days, and obviously my brother being there, and just kind of what they got to accomplish that first year as an expansion team. And, we came up short in the playoffs, unfortunately, but again, it was one of those things where like they came in right off the bat, and like you say, you name all those guys that they had, they were great players. But it reminded me a lot of the Boston days where we came in and they weren't really an expansion team. Like they had a bunch of good players. And again, unfortunately, kind of like Boston, we fell a little bit short, but it was awesome. And just kind of, with Joe Tsai, the ownership, and Patty Merrill steering the ship, like kind of a first class organization. And, like you say, it didn't help or it didn't hurt, going to 25-degree weather every weekend and getting out of the cold and having some shorts and flip flops getting off the plane. It was a really cool experience.
Absolutely. Now you come back to Rochester in this expansion thing. Stires moves the team to Halifax, and we start from scratch. But this time around, you come back as the captain, so a whole different role, and you play a really big part in getting this thing back off the ground. Let's talk about now you're back with the fan base again. They remember it, but they're also a little bit sore because they watch all their heroes go east.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of an awkward time, and then with Hazer being there, and it just kind of felt right to go back there. I would have liked to go back to San Diego, but it was also tough on my wife and the travel and stuff like that. We were trying to start a family, so it was tough. But after talking to Hazer and a couple other teams, it just felt right to kind of go back, and almost like you owed that fan base to try and get it back to what I saw when I was there in the old Rochester days. So that was kind of my goal when I got there. And then again, lucky enough to be named the captain, but it was a little awkward. Again, the first year was definitely some growing pains as far as season wise, but I think the fans and, as the years gone on, I think they've got over it and kind of embraced the new team. And, talking to fans, it was tough because they almost, not that they resented me, but you tried to explain to them that it wasn't us that moved the team. Like we're trying to keep the team here, but it was someone else that moved the team, and we're trying to bring a team back and just, love this team. And I think they're upset that you changed the color, but it's like, I understand, Dan Carey and the new ownership, they want to try and start fresh and try and start something new. But that was kind of the whole reason I went back, was to try and, pay the fans back and try and get this new team back to kind of the glory days.
Right. And it's interrupted by COVID, which stops the world. And then you come back and, the Nighthawks are actually moving forward. They actually made some really great moves. And, the team that's there now is really, really quite a good team. You shocked the world, though. 2024, and it's like I'm in Colorado. And it's like that came out of, at least for the rest of us, like where'd that come from?
Yeah. Again, it's probably not a story a lot of people know, but I wasn't welcome back in Rochester. So there was a lot of tough and hard conversations between myself and Dan Carey, and I'll be honest, I got kind of blindsided by it.
Right.
We went from, status quo, signing back, and
Mhm.
I'm happy to be here. And I think I thought I had a good season the season before, and we started making strides as far as we had a kind of a 3-year plan of where
Mhm.
we wanted to be, and we were kind of getting there. And they kind of had a change of heart and didn't see me in the plans anymore.
Right.
So again, kind of a bit of a shot to the ego. And again, it was pretty tough, being the captain and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. So I had to pivot pretty quickly. And I kind of kept that side of the story pretty quiet and
Yeah.
unless people asked, but it kind of, I think people thought I signed in Colorado, but it wasn't by choice. It was more, I wasn't welcome back, and not,
Right.
I shouldn't say welcome back, but I wasn't in the
You weren't in their
plans.
future plans. Yeah.
No. So again, it kind of worked out well and gave me, a little bit of motivation to kind of keep going. And, end of the day, it worked out kind of tenfold how the last season went. But
Right.
yeah, that's kind of how that all went down.
And it's interesting because Colorado wasn't having a good year, and it kind of leapfrogged because you were playing well, and Buffalo picks you up at the trade deadline. And Buffalo had a weird season too because they were injury problems all over the place. Still all the talent in the world from before, but they just weren't having the traction there. I think they were 500 or so when they picked you up. But as soon as you got there, and your style of play, and again reuniting with Matt Vince. I know you guys had a few things from before, but reuniting and getting on and knowing that you're on the same page, and him aligning that defense with you and everybody working with you. That defense from Buffalo became just that's a blueprint on how to play playoff defense, and I think you were a big part of that, and it changed the entire look of that team.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I wish, I wish I could take some credit, but whether I stabilize things or not, I just, it's always weird kind of getting traded to a team, and it was definitely weird getting traded to Buffalo, and now I've fully embraced it, and I love the team, I love the city, obviously love the fans. How can you not? But when I first got the call, it was a little bit awkward. I've had some, and I guess the way I play, it's always tough because you have more negative run-ins with players than positive run-ins. But once I kind of got over myself and realized that, like you say, record aside, when I looked at that team, I said, this team still has as good a shot as anyone else. Obviously the season wasn't going the way they wanted to, but I was like, this team still has a great shot of doing some damage, especially if we just get to the playoffs. And, I kind of came in and, I'm not usually a guy that I used to like to come in and kind of do my role, but not that I came in and changed things, but the way we were doing things, I knew maybe Matt wasn't maybe as comfortable. So I kind of was just like, hey, why don't we just, I know who we have, and kind of why don't we just try and do it this way, and then we kind of all bought into it, and again the rest is history. And then again I just try and do what I do and get in the way of a few shots, and it all worked out.
It's the goalie in you, being able to slow down so many shots.
Exactly. Even though I changed 19 years ago, I still have some of those reflexes left, I guess.
Absolutely. And it's also, you take a look at that defense, and it was really unsung because, you got Priolo, you got yourself, you got Belter, you got a bunch of guys, big guys that are going to make guys pay for coming inside. So a lot of guys on the outside. So Matt gets a chance to see the shots. Plus, you guys are athletic enough. He pulls you down by the goal crease, almost 3 goaltenders, but you're quick enough to get out in shooting lanes and block passing lanes and all that. So it really is frustrating for anybody playing you guys, because you guys are always there for any of the main shots.
Yeah, for sure. And it was and that's kind of how we played back in those Rochester days too. Kind of keep the shots from the outside, try and get the shots to where Matt likes to see him. And kind of that's kind of what I preached when we got back there. Like, why don't we just not let anyone get inside? We'll give up some outside shots, and the ones that, Vino's comfortable with, and see where it goes from there. And that's kind of how it went. But like you say, and people ask me about the comparisons between Rochester and Buffalo, and I feel like both defenses are very similar as far as, like you say, you got a guy like Pre, but even Pre doesn't really get his just due a lot of times. But
Right.
it's a lot of guys who aren't in conversations for D of the year, Tranny of the year, or when you talk about defenses, we kind of get passed over, and that was like the same in Rochester. But that kind of like in Rochester, that's the way we like it, and we'll just kind of keep doing our job and hopefully keep stacking some wins. But like you say, we're a big group back there, and again, we like to try and make it difficult on offenses and try and make sure we keep them to the outside. And again, like you say, there's some big boys back there, but they're definitely some young and quicker feet than I ever had. That's for sure.
But this team also knows how to win, which is an acquired thing too, of knowing how to finish teams. Because you guys haven't won like by 20 goals in every game. You guys have won these character games, 1-goal games, coming from behind, especially the last number of weeks, coming from behind and not panicking when you're down by 4 or 5 and just chipping away. And you'll get your runs. You got great on with Dane and with Josh, let alone with Kluch and all the other guys in there, Tahoka. You got such talent on that team that it's almost a few of us have talked about it. It's almost a shame if it doesn't three-peat, because there's such talent, and the team it really is the blueprint of how the chemistry is supposed to work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've said this a couple of times. This is probably the best offense and I told the guys when I first came in here too, I hated playing against these guys because their offense was so good. And I think if you look at the games where we do come from behind, I've been in some games against this team where you can only hold these guys for so long. They're just too good, and there's just too many weapons that somehow they always find a way to break through. And the one thing about that offense, like our offensive group, is they do all the right things. And when stuff starts getting hard or things aren't working, it doesn't get to, a me ball or, hey, I gotta win it. They keep within the system. They keep plugging away, and they just know that if they keep doing, what our game plan is, that eventually you're going to break through. And again, so far it's worked out, but again, there's just too much talent on that team. And, you mentioned, Dane, Josh, and Tahoga, Kluch, Kyle Buchanan, like the list goes on, and just everyone has such a good role on that offensive team, and everyone just kind of fits so perfectly that's what makes this team so dangerous.
Right. One of the things I like doing is coming in and watching your pregame warm-ups, and we talked about this after one of the games, is just to see how the team is together. And everybody's having fun. Everybody's loose. Everybody's doing that extra bit of stretching and the extra bit of laps and things like that. Everything that's needed. Matt comes in and he's dancing along. And I've asked a few people when in other cities, prior to the game, is Matt dancing around? Just, is he, locked in? Like, look out, it's going to be a long night for you guys.
Yeah.
So it's just little tells on that. And I'm seeing how you guys operate even after the game and seeing how you guys all react. And there's a certain kind of chemistry that you don't see very often that I'm seeing here. And it really is something special.
Yeah. And again, I think, give credit to I think it goes back to a lot of these guys are together every day during the week. Dane lives there, Josh lives there, Mickey lives there, Belter's from there, Kluch lives there, Chase Frazier lives there. So these guys are working out every day together, shooting every day together. And then again, you got to give credit to Buffalo. We have all the stuff that these guys need. They're doing the recovery. They're giving us everything that we need to be successful, but the guys are using it. And again, we talk about you got to do the right things, and it's fine that if people give the opportunity, but you eventually got to take the opportunity. And everyone on this team kind of does all the little things to make themselves successful and keep themselves healthy. And that was the one thing that was, when I came into that room and I'm looking at the leaders like Josh and Dane, and you look at Vino, like these guys are all doing the right things away from the rink. So when you have your best players, working out, going to recovery, doing extra sprints, it's pretty tough not to do that as a young guy or as a first year guy or as a veteran guy to kind of jump on board again, I think when you see the success this group's had, it's not, again, they're crazy talented, but they're doing all the little things away from the game they've earned why they're so good.
How much of a factor is keeping each other honest?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, and again, I think that's, you talk about being close-knit group, like no one's afraid to not to call each other out, but everyone's super positive, but everyone's able to talk to each other about, hey, like we need to do this, this play was that play, or here, like, with Dane and Josh, like they don't care if they score, but it's like, hey, if we're running this play, let's make sure we run the play, or like, hey, I saw this on this last play, like you could be here. Like there's constant communication from top to bottom, and it's always like positive, but no one's ever afraid to be like, hey, this is what, I see what we need to do. And everyone, again, to credit everyone on the team, everyone's like, yep, sounds great. Like, let's do it. And again, I think that goes a long way too, when you have everyone kind of on the same board and willing to listen and kind of talk through things. And it's huge because, in a 18 game season, in a 8-month long season, like stuff's going to go wrong. And if you can't kind of keep each other accountable, then, the ship can go off the rails pretty quickly. But on this team, like I say, it starts with off the floor stuff, and it definitely carries on to on the floor.
Right. The biggest thing for you guys is to stay healthy. You're in the midst of this 12 games in 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's just stay healthy. You're up in the top. You're going into playoffs, so let's make sure that everybody is healthy.
Yeah, and then again, that comes back to guys getting chiro, physio, and again, Buffalo allowing us to have these things at our disposal, but guys are making sure that every little bump and bruise is getting taken care of, and Buffalo does a great job allowing that. Because again, we're in the grind of a season here right now, and like you say, we've obviously lost a couple of guys to injuries, which is bad, but anything that's nagging, like we make sure we take care of, and that's the only way you can kind of be successful. Like you say, the best ability is availability. So if guys aren't available, then we're in trouble. But you can do stuff on your own to make sure that you're always available, and this team does that.
Right. Let's fast forward a little bit, Joe. The end of the year comes, and do you still see it? You're still in great shape. You're still playing well. You still have that want to keep going?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I've been getting this question asked more and more for whatever reason, and it's funny, like,
well,
it obviously
40s coming out in the doorstep. That's usually
yeah, I know.
Most don't have your ability to keep pushing and want to keep doing the grind.
No, for sure. I mean, I still love it, and I got 2 young kids and a third one on the way, and my wife's she's amazing, but she likes coming to the games. It's great for the kids to come to the game now too, and that's that's a little extra motivation now to keep playing and try and build some memories with your little ones. But no, I still love it, man. Like I always say I'll take year by year. We'll see how this year goes, and then we'll kind of reevaluate. But I definitely still have a love for the game, and I always, if I still like training, if I'm still healthy enough, and if I still feel I'm good enough, like I said, I'll always keep playing. And so hopefully those things hopefully I can check all those boxes off, and hopefully teams still want me. But yeah, I still have a passion for it. I still love it. Like it's one of those things, again, you don't think about when you first start, but the problem with when you're done playing is that's it.
Yeah.
There's no coming back. You can get into coaching, but it's not the same. So like I said, I still do love it. And
the camaraderie with the guys isn't the same if you're a coach.
No, exactly. And again, I love being with young guys now too. They keep you honest and keep you humble too. So it's great, man. So again, we'll always take it year by year, but I definitely still love it.
If you still have the fire, there's no point quitting, right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And, with the way the league's set up and my job and stuff like that, like playing in Buffalo, like it's easy. I shouldn't say it's easier, but it makes life a little bit easier as far as work and home life. But that's the thing, right? You never want to have any regrets, I guess, too, right? And I guess one thing to be said is if it does end tomorrow, I wouldn't have any regrets, and the game of lacrosse doesn't owe me anything. It's been unbelievable to me. I've got to travel the world and live in some cool places, but end of the day, like, there is something said about, still being in a competitive environment, still battling with your teammates and your friends for a common goal. And that's kind of where I'm at now.
You sound like you feel very lucky at your age. Again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to harp on that, but it's important at your age to know that you're with a team that takes care of your body. That's what I'm hearing. That takes care of your body the best, because you need it more than younger guys. Because our bodies when we get older don't bounce back as willingly as they did when we were younger, right?
No.
So the kind of maintenance that you have to do that's available to is helping to extend your career, is my point.
Yeah, 100%. And that goes along with the stuff I do away from the rink too. Like training and that stuff is changed over the years too. You got to kind of pivot and your body usually better than anyone else. But yeah, definitely more emphasis on recovery and mobility and stuff like that.
Well, being a firefighter doesn't hurt either. That you have.
No, they go hand in hand, which is great. But yeah, the days of lifting super heavy and that stuff has kind of gone out the window, and it's more, the boring stretching and mobility and stuff to keep you healthy.
But that speaks to the beauty of getting older. Speak to us about that fact, and just to be clear, I'll make sure I clarify what I'm asking. The older you get, it's not that you rely on your body less, but you can rely more on your mind and use that to do the work that your body used to do. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things, right? Like you hopefully get smarter as you get older and realize that some things you could do when you're younger, maybe you can't do now, but you learn tricks and angles and places to be. And, I've been in this situation before. Here's what I got to do. And again, you kind of rely on that as you get older, because, maybe you're not as fast, maybe not as quick, but if I can outsmart a person or put myself in a better position, then I'll be in a better position to defend this guy or make a play. And that's kind of, like you say, that's kind of how you got to get as you get older. Like when you're young and, again, I was never fast, but some guys can get away with making mistakes because they can get back where, I can't do that. So I got to make sure kind of every time I'm out there, I'm putting myself in good positions to be successful for sure.
Yeah, being fast, quick, but the point is to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we talked a little bit about the afterwards. You've played for some great coaches, accordingly. Matt Sawyer, Pat Coyle, Mike Hazen, Johnny Meridian, Pat Merrill, John Tavares, of course. Does coaching come to mind that eventually when you do hang it up, is it something that interests you that you want to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had this conversation too. And obviously you say, as you get older, that conversation I don't have an exit plan right now. Mm-hmm. I do like coaching. I had a chance to coach actually with Pat Merrill. I coached the Six Nations junior team, and we were lucky enough to win the Minto that 1 year I coached, and I did love it. And I've done lacrosse camps, hockey camps my whole life, and I do like that aspect. And even being an older guy now, like I do like that aspect of teaching and breaking down game and trying to teach people the nuances of how I see it. So it is definitely something I'm interested in. Most likely kind of how I do everything. I'll take it as it comes. Again, like I said, I don't have an exit plan when or whenever this ends, but it is something I'm interested in. It is something I do have a passion for. So yeah, I mean, I could see it in the future. Long story short, I could see it in the future.
Right. Now, I want to talk just a little bit before we finish just about your podcast, Back the Bird. I love it. I love it since you started it. How did it come about originally to get started with it?
It kind of COVID, I guess, when everyone was locked up and just had nothing to do, and that was one of my exit plans. Was when I was done playing, I was going to start a podcast. Along the same, but it was going to be it was going to be a more of like a semi-professional podcast and we kind of did that a little bit to start it back. We got a couple different athletes, but it was going to be get people who aren't making the millions of dollars and get their experience of, whether it's playing the East Coast League or over in Europe, or get some lacrosse guys, get back, like just get a bunch of people who had kind of crazy athletic stories and played in these cool spaces. So I always had this in the back of my mind. And then I think Dan Lomas was being active on Twitter. Then Nick Ocello reached out to him about starting a podcast. And then Lomi tagged me in a thing. And then I was like, actually, I kind of had this idea. He's like, well, we should do it now. I was like, I don't know if I want to do it now. He's like, let's just do it now. And then kind of that's how it started. So 3 of us started that kind of during COVID so then when we started, it was to kind of give the fans something to listen to while lacrosse wasn't going on and while sports wasn't going on. And that's how it kind of started. And then, it's just morphed into what it is now. And, we still try and get out an episode a week. But yeah, no, it's been fun. It's, it kind of started off as just, a boredom or a passion project. And then it's just kind of continued on. And then obviously Johnny Donville joined the pod, which has been huge. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it all started. Kind of just a little bit on a whim.
Insight to what you guys are up to away from it. And just a little bit more of you guys as you, right? Yeah,
exactly. And I think, with the explosions of podcasts and, like the Spittin' Chicklets and the Bustin' and the Boys, like obviously they're in a bit of a different realm than we are, but that's kind of what we're trying to achieve is not just talking about guys playing careers, but the funny stories and the stuff and who these people really are away from the game. And obviously teams and now with social media have done a good job of that too. But it's more to kind of peel back the layers and show people like who these guys are off the floor and see kind of what we go through on, a season long thing, and the funny stories, the funny trips and the travel stories and the pranks and stuff like that for sure.
Listen, I really want to thank you for taking the time. I know that it's busy time. You're in the middle of a really hectic season, and you guys are looking terrific. And I wish you all the best. I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. I'll be out in Bandit Land for a game, I think, the end of the month. And
awesome.
Looking forward to seeing you and talking pre and post with you.
Awesome, buddy. Well, no problem, man. Appreciate you guys having me. This was awesome. Thanks so much.
And thanks for some of the insights in going from a goaltender to a defenseman.
No worries.
I
had no choice.
That's the best thing we talked about today, because it's an insight. After you do this for so many years, that's an insight that's pretty rare. And you should really appreciate that opportunity, because you have a very special, idea of what it takes to be a goaltender and a player. And I'm going to assume that being a goaltender helped you to be a defender. I don't mean to extend the program, but that's something that comes to my mind.
Yeah, for sure. Again, being in the net, you get to watch the whole game. So it does help you kind of break down the game for sure. And maybe made the transition a little bit easier for me playing defenseman, kind of knowing what I like to see as a goalie, and helps my relationship with a guy like with Vino and stuff like that, and other goalies, kind of knowing what they're going through and what they like to see. But the funny thing about that story is, going back to being how old I am now, most kids don't even know that I was ever a goalie. It was so long ago that when I tell people that, they're like, get out of here. I'm like, no, I swear to God, I got drafted. They're like, shut up. Like, because they would have been like 3 years old, or some of them weren't even born when I first got drafted. So when I say that, when people find out now, they're just like, get out of here. I'm like, no, I swear to God, man. So that's what's funny. It used to be it kind of was a big storyline. Now it's gone away, and now people just don't even believe it. So pretty funny.
Well, I hope this interview helps me with my goalie union application.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm still in it, but hopefully I'm still in it. I guess if I'm blocking shots, I get maybe an honorable mention.
There you go.
Like I said, you soak up a lot of shots, so I think you do it like an old pro.
I appreciate it.
Paul, thank you. Say hello to your family. Say hello to your son. Thanks for him dropping by.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having him on for a bit.
That's awesome. Cutest, best looking guy on this show. That's for sure.
For sure.
thanks for doing this, buddy. Really appreciate it. Paul Dawson, Buffalo Bandits, they're in the middle of a pretty incredible year, which is basically just another year when you're a Buffalo Bandit. Good for them. Thanks for watching, everybody. For Gary Groob, Paul Dawson, I'm Candid Frank. Thanks for watching. Until next time, Thursdays at 4.